Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nourish with Renata podcast. Today's episode is a really fun one because I recently connected with this woman at a local women entrepreneurial event. And we instantly hit it off because we started talking about a conversation that's really near and dear to our hearts, and that is food relationships and emotional intelligence. And so I can't wait to deepen this conversation today. But first, please welcome to the episode, Roshmi. How's it going?
Hi, Renata. I'm doing well. How are you?
So good. I'm so excited to chat with you today. But first, we have to make sure that everyone gets to know you and what it is that you do.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be on your podcast today. I am an ICF accredited professional certified coach. My niche is in mindfulness based leadership coaching as well as business coaching. And I strive to target high performance individuals and leaders to help improve their emotional intelligence. I'm a big believer of EQ, emotional intelligence, and kind of enabling us to reach our highest potential, whether it be at work or with our children in our personal lives. And the whole time, I continue to work on their mental strength and resilience. I found those are two very necessary skills to have, as we navigate through our challenges.
Mm, I love that. And this is really where we started to find that our niches connected so beautifully, because it turns out one of the things that you also discuss a lot with your clients, just as I do, is emotional intelligence and their food relationship. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about perhaps a recent story that might enlighten our listeners and our viewers on what this connection point really is.
Absolutely. And I love sharing this story because it relates to my own son. And I am an avid believer in the self awareness that emotional intelligence creates. So my son is 18 now. And throughout his life, he's had challenges with food in different ways. And of course, when he was younger, I was the one telling him what to eat and what not to eat for his own nutritional benefit. But after a while, and as he started to gain this again sense of self-awareness, he did some work on himself. He started to recognize how he self-sabotages in different situations where his emotions are involved. He started to recognize his own strengths and what comes naturally to him. He began just to be more present with his emotions. And as he was getting mature and developing that presence with his emotions, he was able to just understand what his body appreciates in terms of food and what his body just doesn't feel good with. And it's funny because he kind of made a switch and we were all taken off guard because it was gradual for the most part, but I think we weren't ready for the discipline that he showed. So I clearly remember it was a tradition on the weekends to go to the donut shop on a Saturday morning, and we'd get donuts and kolaches as a family, and just maybe like half an hour, 45-minute affair. But I clearly remember this one Saturday when instead of getting that donut, he was like, no, I'm just gonna have my breakfast taco and I'm gonna have some kind of electrolyte type drink and I'm good. And it's almost like the rest of the family was like, what? You're not gonna have a donut? Like he was disappointing us, right? But he was like, no, I've actually come to realize that after I eat that donut, I feel really tired, I feel really sluggish, my mood fluctuates, and so I'm making a conscious decision to stay away from donuts, which led him to understand his relationship with any gluten product, anything that has gluten in it, because it had the same effects as well as sugar. So it was never a fight, on this is what you need to eat in any case, but I do feel that emotional intelligence that he gained over the years, and perhaps it's because maybe some of it's had to do with me being a coach, and trying to instill that ultimately he was clear on what his body needed and what it didn't.
I think that's such a powerful story. Number one, kudos to your son for being 18 years old and already realizing the foods that serve him and perhaps the ones that don't serve him any longer. So I think that there's going to be a lot of people listening that will be like, oh my gosh, yes, I completely understand that feeling. I have the craving, for instance, to have a donut, but then I have it. And about 30 minutes later, I'm crashing. I'm feeling even worse than I did before. But the craving, that feeling of urgency, the need to have something sugary or highly refined or something with gluten, even though we know makes us feel worse after a time, can be so strong. The feeling, that need. So I'm curious, how would you advise someone if they were totally resonating with this story, but also recognizing, having that self awareness of, man, but that just feels so hard to do in real life?
Right. No, that's a great question. So having that awareness of your emotional state is key, right?
Mm,
Just understanding what triggers you in terms of feeling stressed and feeling sad, bored, unhappy. Because as most of us know, it's those emotions that are led by certain thoughts in our brain that make us reach for that donut or whatever unhealthy fast food that we want so we can get that quick dopamine hit, right? So I found that just one, being aware of the thoughts and emotions that occur in those moments, slowing yourself down to build that awareness is key, and then learning some kind of emotional regulation strategy. For example, if you're stressed, and many of us are, of course, throughout the day, especially if you notice when we come back from a long day at work, many of us just want to reach into that pantry and grab whatever's convenient and crunchy or salty or sugary because we're just like, you know what? We've worked all day. It's been a day, and I deserve it. I deserve something to taste good in my mouth and just have this little, like, a piece of joy, right? Only to realize soon after that we're like, ugh, we're just, yeah, that didn't feel too good, or we're getting tired, or wait a minute, this is not in line with what I was doing to work on my physique, for example. This doesn't serve those values, right? So just being aware in those moments of what's going on and maybe picking an alternative relaxation response, because
mm,
that's maybe all that you need, right? You're stressed, you're home, maybe a warm bath might be better in that moment, or, watch a favorite show on Netflix or take a walk with a friend. And oftentimes, those alternatives can satiate you the same, if not more, than reaching out for the unhealthy foods.
that's such a powerful tip because it really works. And I've definitely recognized within myself when I've had that emotional intelligence awareness, like, okay, I'm recognizing I'm feeling stressed out. The reason why I'm grabbing for that cookie or grabbing for that chip is to feel like I need something to lower the stress level, but then also having the cognizance of, actually, I can get the same thing from going outside and playing with the kids, or doing some deep breath work or meditation or journaling or talking with a loved one. All of those things have really helped me to condition myself so that I don't immediately need to grab something outside of myself to regulate myself. And so I think that's such a great reminder.
Thank you, Renata. And that really goes for anything that can be ultimately self-destructive. I mean, I use the same kind of example when it comes to retail therapy, and people look to buying things, excessively. Of course, we all buy things excessively, say on Amazon, when we feel negative or stressed. I mean, it's just that we need that, again, that dopamine hit or that relaxation response. And just we sometimes go to the wrong places for it, again with excessive purchasing later to realize that your bank account's drained, or did you really need that? You could have saved it for something that was more purposeful for you. So again, it's so important just to take those moments and slow down and build that awareness in doing whatever works for you. I'm a mindfulness teacher. I teach yoga and mindfulness as well. So for me, meditation is very important in regulating the mind, or doing a short breathing exercise before I reach for food is very important. So there's all kinds of tools out there.
Mm. Now, I want to also ask you a little bit about something that you did mention briefly in your story about your son, and that is the reaction that you and your family had towards this, change in behavior of your son. And I think a lot of women will recognize this because, especially if you're working on eating healthier, typically what might happen is you'll go out to eat with friends or family and you'll choose something different than normal. Say perhaps you usually go to this burger joint and everybody gets a burger, but then today you got a salad. And I know based upon personal experience that the people around you might be a little perturbed by that and have things to say, sometimes not necessarily very nice things to say about your change in behavior. So I'm curious, as the individual who is making these incredible healthy choices and really honoring what your particular health goals are, how do you deal with people who might have something to say negatively about your change in behavior?
Right. So, kind of using my son's example, going back to that, and of course, my husband and I were more understanding being adults, but his sister, his little sister, I mean, she's 16, just a few years behind him, was just kind of was disappointed. Like, I can't share a donut with my brother, who I've been,
Mm,
sharing these moments with, and I noticed right away her inner critic got triggered. So she
mm,
said to him, you know what? Are you just trying to show off like you're just this great eater, like, that you're better than us because you're giving
mm,
up the donut? And that completely took me off guard. I mean, I was trying to celebrate him, my son, and his discipline. And I actually had to stop and show her a little compassion in that moment,
mm,
because really what she was trying to express is that she just enjoyed, you know, they had this love language with food, and she was enjoying those moments of sharing that. But her ego got a little defensive and a little triggered, and so she was judging him for it, judging herself for it. And that's what generally happens, when you're in a crowd and you're doing something different, you're going to feel that judgment, right? Like, and it's funny, some of my clients who I've coached on emotional eating have said to me, I went out and with some girls, and there's this one girl, and I just feel like she's trying to one up me every time by having the salad, even though I get the steak. And I started to dig a little deeper and try to understand the story that her mind was telling her, which was, you know what? You're not disciplined enough like she is. And that's why she looks the way she does. She comes off the way she does. And you're never going to get there. You're not enough. So it really can be about digging a little deeper in yourself and trying to hear what those voices are saying. And of course, ruling out any false assumptions they're making, because generally they do, right? What we call in our emotional intelligence world, the saboteur voices often self-sabotage and tell us things that have no merit, based on our own assumptions. So like my coachee was telling me, she said, I was just so triggered by that. And that led me to eat even worse. I got like a big slice of apple pie afterwards, because she wasn't feeling good about herself around this woman that was eating healthy. So it's really important, to understand those thought patterns, those negative thought patterns that get in the way, dicing out what's true and what's false, and realizing that, that woman that was eating that salad was just serving her own values with food, which may be about health and well-being, or she has potentially genetics that are not on her side with diabetes and cholesterol, and she's just trying to honor that. That's all that she's doing. And once you kind of see those truths about other people and yourself, then you're able to, move more purposefully forward with food.
yeah, I think that's such a beautiful reminder. And I love that we both talk a lot about triggers. We both talk a lot about the stories that we're telling ourselves, which I love. We're so aligned in that way. And I think it's also so important that you talked about compassion there, because you never know what's going on in someone else's world. So whether it's someone who's a little bit disappointed that you're not getting the donut with them, or if it's someone that's getting a salad, you don't know the reasons behind why they're making those choices. And that's why we can only control what we can control about ourselves. And having the emotional awareness for ourselves, as well as being emotionally aware that something else could be going on in someone else's world, is so important so that we also don't become the judgers of what everyone else is doing.
And you just hit it. The master of these voices is our judge, right? We're judging others, judging ourselves, judging our circumstances oftentimes when it comes to eating and all kinds of behavior. And that judge, again, in our world of emotional intelligence coaching, is the master of self-sabotage. And to really get to know how your judge is triggered and the thought patterns it directs and the underlying lies that it tells you is so important in the self-discovery journey towards eating healthy.
Okay, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about the judge, because I think that when we think about it as a character in our own minds, the one that is placing blame or like choosing specific things to focus on, it actually for me becomes a little bit easier to separate myself from. So I'm not the one that's judging, like there's someone in my mind that's choosing these specific things to judge upon. So I'm curious, how would you like people to get aware of their own judge, and how can they move forward with this knowledge to create a better food relationship?
Absolutely. So I have been trained in positive intelligence. So some of what I'm going to say is definitely I've taken away from their PQ, what we call PQ training. And what I've learned through my training is, again, the judge is the master of the saboteurs, and the judge comes in three modalities. One shows up as our inner critic, constantly berating us and putting us down for past mistakes and even future failures that we're going to experience. It's the mode of the judge that wakes us up in the middle of the night and just, if you've had that feeling, and tells us, oh my God, here you go. You're never going to get this right. You're never going to eat healthy. You're always picking the wrong foods. Look at you. Look at how you look. All the horrible things that voice tells us. And then, of course, there's that second modality of the judge where we're judging other people. And that's the one where most of us are familiar with more because, we do it when we're with our girlfriends and, oh, did you see so and so? She's really let go after those kids. Or, we do a lot of judgment with body and physicality. And again, on the flip side, with people's behavioral changes, because we may not understand them. In the example of the woman that was now eating the salads more often. But the part about the judge, I think a lot of us miss is how we judge our circumstances. So that mode of the judge is really important too. I remember when we went through the during COVID times, a lot of people mentioned to me that their eating was out of control. And I asked them, what does the pandemic have to do with your eating? And they said, I'm just not in a good place and I'm not going to be happy until we're just done with all this. We're a free society again. I can go back to my work. My kids can go back to going to a school, that's not virtual. And then I'm going to get my act together and eat right. Again, if you listen to the judge's voice, it's all negative, right? It's all creating these negative emotions. And all it's doing is delaying your happiness and instead causing you undue stress. So this is a very important voice to recognize. We all have it. Let's normalize it. We're all human. So it shows up. But the more we're aware of it and the more we unpack its lies or fear-based assumptions, then the better off we are serving our own values and our strengths and our belief system that serves us. So that's how I like to talk about the judge. It's not who you are, it's the voice in your head. Who you are is much bigger than that. Who you are does reflect those internal values, what is meaningful to you, your strengths that come naturally to you, and the beliefs that you grew up with that have never let you down, right? That's really what makes up who you are, which is far louder and more powerful than the voices of the judge.
Love how you talked about it's inner, it's external, and it's situational. And I feel like the situational piece is also often ignored because I think a lot of people, for instance, they'll say at this time of year, and right now we're recording at the beginning of October, they'll say, oh, yeah, I could eat healthier now, but we've got Halloween coming up, but we've got Thanksgiving, and then there's Christmas. So I'll just wait until January because then the situation will be more convenient. It will be easier for me to do it then because everybody will be doing a New Year's resolution or opting to become healthier. And what's really lovely about the example you shared is when you can see that difference, that distinction between the situation and your choices, it actually is like, what are you waiting for? Like you could start today in the most positive and productive way.
Exactly. And such great examples you gave. This seasonal time of the year does bring in a lot of, I guess, random eating, you could say, that doesn't serve your interest. But aside from the seasonal, issue, when I was in corporate, I'm a CPA as well, and I used to be an auditor, working long hours when I started my career. And I remember, I'd be in the office sometimes till 2 a.m. and we'd have dinner and lunches catered in, and I didn't pay for it, and it's coming from expensive restaurants. I was so stressed, so tired from being at work all day. Yeah, there was nothing keeping me from not eating those foods that were brought in, and many, many unhealthy options were there. And I think I kept telling the story. I kept telling myself, well, when busy season is over, that's how a lot of accountants speak. They have a time of the year where they do the taxes and audit reports. That's when I'll get my act together. And I could see the pounds that I gained over that time. I mean, well into the double digits because I just lost myself, in that stress, in that fatigue and unhappy place of working long hours. And I use food to indulge me. So, yes, I think that, waiting for that happiness is the lie of your judge, right? That you're telling yourself you can actually have a great festive fall season, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and still serve your healthy, purpose with food.
Mm. I love that you also spoke about busy seasons at work because I think all of us will resonate with that. There are times every so often where you feel like the chaos of business or the chaos of life is taking over. So I'm curious, what are your strategies for maintaining your emotional intelligence when it comes to your food choices throughout those really busy seasons?
Yeah, so, coming back to awareness, self-awareness. So, in my coaching program that uses positive intelligence, once again, the first thing we do is have people become aware of their judge. And I take it down to grassroots. I'm like, let's draw a picture of your judge character. Let's give it a name. Even with my kids, we call, like with my daughter, we call her Judge Judy. So again, it kind of personifies them and reminds them that it's not who they are, right? So just becoming aware of the voices of the judge showing up during those busy times, telling you, oh, again, you've worked hard, you deserve it, the company's paying for all this food. Go ahead, just get it all in. You never know when you'll get this opportunity again. Just recognizing those voices and taking the pause in that moment is very important. And then really like understanding, okay, I have a choice, like you mentioned. I can keep going on this path, but is it going to serve me or is it not going to serve me? And having that almost self-talk in that moment. Again, it comes with time, of course, as you work on yourself. And then the other thing that I found useful as a useful tool with my clients and even my kids is practicing that slow down during your food.
Mm.
So as you're starting to eat, make sure it's in a place where there's no distractions. You're not eating, without mindfulness or just you're not eating in an absent-minded way. And, just taking that pause and, you know, hearing the sound of the lettuce as you bite into it, right? Or really smelling the food and just what it does for your senses. or feeling the sort of texture of the noodles that go in your mouth, so smooth, so delicious. Like bringing it to a mindfulness practice with food can not only slow yourself down in terms of what you're eating, how much you're eating, and just releasing those endorphins that you were looking for anyway, right? To show up. This is, again, it doesn't come second nature all the time. What I did with my own children when they were young, because I was trying to bring in these practices as they were growing up, we kind of made it like a game around the dinner table. And, we were just, we started off with, hey, let's just take the first bite with mindfulness. Like, let's share around the table. What are you experiencing? And at the time they were little, so it was just cute. Like they found fascination, with hearing the sounds of the popcorn or whatever they were having. But it was enlightening to see them slow down, and then, of course, to reinforce these concepts as they're growing up, to build that positive, self-aware relationship with food.
I love the sound of that little game to play around the dinner table. I think that's so fun. And I've never heard that applied in that way before. So I love that. And I also think it's fascinating because we both talk about utilizing all of your senses. So, like, what are all your senses feeling, noticing during this particular moment when you take that first bite, whereas you're drinking that first sip of whatever it is you might be drinking? I think that's such a powerful way to slow down and really get in tune with your body and what it's feeling.
Absolutely. And, growing up, I was really blessed to have my mother who put her heart and soul into our meals. And for me, eating when I was growing up, we had Indian food every day, and I got sick of it, of course. But as I was growing up, I was a little older. I started to recognize the energy and love that she put into our food, and I started to connect it with my senses. And then food, it just became a healing agent in my life. When I was able to slow down and recognize sensorially what my mom's food was giving to me, it was like the best part of my day. And my immunity was strong, my weight was stable, my energy was good. And these are the outcomes that we really want to look at when we look at our relationship with food versus the body shaming and, being hard on yourself because of your aging and changes that you're seeing. We don't want to start there. We want to bring food into our lives in a much more positive light, and then see the outcomes that really, give us what we're looking for.
I love that you mentioned that because so often, especially for us as women in a society where it's so emphasized our aesthetics, right? What we look like, what body shape we are, what size of dress we're able to fit in, et cetera, et cetera. I love that we both are such proponents for body positivity and mindfulness. Because when you can recognize, hey, I noticed that the way that I talk to myself is so different now because I have that emotional intelligence, I have the awareness. Oh my gosh, what a huge confidence boost that you're giving to yourself every single day, as opposed to what might have happened before, where you're looking in the mirror and admonishing yourself for what you look like. It's such a powerful result from continuing to work on what's between your ears.
Absolutely. And in fact, many times, when I do have my clients that come in and they want to talk about diets, for example, I want to get started on this diet, or can you tell me about a diet that works so that I can look a certain way? I try to like bring them back again to what's going on in their mental makeup. And oftentimes we discover that that judge, coming back to that inner critic, is so harsh. They're so hard on themselves when they look in the mirror. And then we discover the triggers. Is it that, famous actress who's now 50 and still looking like she's 30 years old? And is that triggering our inner critic, our inner judge? And we're responding with diet that she's following to get to look like, her. So it's so important to like observe those thought patterns and then come back to the reality of who we are, what matters at this age and stage of our lives. I do this exercise called Love Your Body. Again, a tool that I learned in positive intelligence, where I ask my clients to look in the mirror every day and just, take in every blemish, every positive thing, and just see the imperfections in a good light, like in a positive way. And it's not easy in the beginning, I know, because we have that tendency to compare ourselves to what others are doing and how they look. But once they repeat it and they really scan themselves from head to toe, and they're like, you know what, that laugh line came up, and actually that makes me look a little wiser or a little more experienced. And as they do that, they feel better about themselves internally. And that's what it's all about, right? Fostering that inner belief more than anything. Because once you have that, then you see yourself, as you mentioned, Renata, in such a beautiful light. Anything is possible.
Yeah. Oh, so incredible. I love that you spoke about that. Okay. So before I let you go, because honestly, I could talk about this with you for a really long time.
Same here. Same here. This is really fun.
Yeah. I'd love for you to share, what would be your greatest encouragement for a woman out there who might be listening and is recognizing herself in many of the stories that we shared. Perhaps it is, understanding, oh, you know what? When I do eat those highly refined, high sugar foods, I do feel that energy crash occurring. Or when I do look in the mirror, I am criticizing myself. Or, I am recognizing I want to be healthier, but I'm just looking around and seeing all these reasons why I shouldn't do it. It's really difficult right now, et cetera, et cetera. What would be your words of wisdom for her?
A great, beautiful question to ask here at the end. I think I would start again by asking her, what is the story that she's telling herself? What is the voice in her head telling her about who she is? And and again, having her react that way to herself, and getting down to recognizing that there is so many assumptions, that there's so many lies underneath those thought patterns. And in our coaching program, in fact, in positive intelligence, we have a self-saboteur assessment that I give my clients. If your audience goes to the Positive Intelligence website, they can do a Discover Your Saboteurs. There's a tab for it. And that's just the first step in understanding these thought patterns, along with the voices of the judge. So just kind of understanding what is going on in those moments, maybe journaling that, maybe just saying, oh, I had this moment today where I reached out for that slice of pizza, and I realized why I did that. I had a stressful day. My son was bullied at school, and I was just feeling really bad for him, and I felt like that slice of pizza could have made me feel good. But in hindsight, I recognized that I could have done something different. So it's first to recognize those self-sabotaging voices. I think is key. And then to build some kind of, mindfulness tool, exercise for yourself. Again, it could be taking a walk, in those moments of stress, or taking a warm bath, or spending time with your child, like you mentioned, something that gives you that relaxation response that works for you. And then also celebrating who you are, taking that moment. There's another exercise that I like to do as part of my training, which is all about looking inside of yourself and really seeing your true essence. Our true essence is as unique as our fingerprints. And just to be able to see what we bring to this world as our strengths, as our unique qualities, as our talents, and really, embracing that, again, oftentimes overshadows those negative voices. So for example, if you're good at baking, if that comes naturally to you, well, bake more often, share this love with your family, or, do a YouTube video, and continuously bring that essence, what makes you unique and beautiful in your work, in your personal life, so that you can, again, build that inner confidence and belief in yourself. And that outweighs all the negative choices and behavior that we make due to our emotional state.
So, so good. I have totally enjoyed this conversation. Before we end, I do want to make sure people can get in touch with you, especially if they want to find out more about your coaching. So, how can people connect with you?
Sure. So, I'm on the social media, all the usual platforms. LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So under Roshmi Dalal, that's one way to find me. I'm also on Facebook under the same name. On Instagram, I'm under Transformational Coach. Also, if any of your viewers have any questions that they want to personally send to me, I'm happy to give out my email address. It's Roshmi, Roshmid, as in Daisy, at gmail.com. And those are really the best ways to reach out to me. I would welcome your questions and insights to what we've talked about today.
Thank you so much. And honestly, I love your approach to these conversations. It's so loving, it's so caring, and it's so non judgmental. So I really appreciate you bringing your insight and especially your tools and exercises into the discussion today. It really gives us something to continue to work on. So thank you so much for being here.
It's been my pleasure, Renata. And one more thing I forgot to mention, and I always do, is my website.
Oh,
So
yeah.
my website is mytransformativecoach.com. And again, it's been such a great experience talking to you today. And I hope we shed some light on a topic very important to both of us.
Yes, 100%. I'll include all of the links below. Make sure to check them out. And we'll see you again on the next episode of the Nourish with Renata podcast.
Thank you again.